Hey guys, in this video I'm going to deliver 7 points to performance in the Olympic lifting pickup. So all of these cues apply to both the snatch and the clean. The idea is to make as many corrections as possible to your body position before you pick the bar off the ground. This not only sets you up for success in the second half of that lift, but also builds a strong foundation for your Olympic lifting journey. In the first half of the video, I'll do a rapid fire introduction of the 7 points. And then in the second half of the video, I'll go into more depth on each one and provide some remedial exercises so that you can make the corrections to your lift. Number 1, use the correct grip. You should have the correct width and you should be using the hook grip. If your hands are too narrow, they'll rub against your legs. And if they're too wide, you won't be able to get into the rack position. I use a measurement of my thumbs towards the start of the knurling marks. For snatching, your hands need to be wide enough so that the bar sits in the crease of your hip. You can see from this still frame, by raising one knee, I create a crease in my hip to hold the bar with. If I can hold it in this position with my arms basically straight, I know my grip is wide enough. Number 2, choose your own stance. So you can look at other lifters to kind of see roughly what they're doing, but the rotation of your feet, as in if you're more duck-footed or if your feet are more straight, and exactly how wide your feet are is up to you and up to you to feel what feels most comfortable and most powerful. Number 3, find the right height for your hips. If your hips are too high, you'll run out of power at the top of your pull. If your hips are too low, your shoulders won't be over the bar and you'll end up tracing your knees. The correct position is usually hips slightly above knee height and with shoulders slightly in front of the bar as viewed from the side. Number 4, glenohumeral rotation. So this is the rotation of your upper arm bones, which is going to change where your elbows are facing. So if your elbows are facing backwards and the crook of your arm is facing forwards, your hands are going to come forwards like a T-Rex. Whereas if you internally rotate your glenohumeral joint, your elbow is going to be facing sideways, and when you bend your elbows, they're going to pop outside and allow you to keep the bar closer to your body. Number 5, balance. Holding the barbell, rock your body weight forward till it's pushing through the balls of your feet or your toes, and then backwards so all the weight is through your heels. As you rock back and forward, try to find a centrated position where you feel your body weight pushing down through your whole foot. Number 6, don't cock your wrist. From a cocked wrist position, it's slower and further to get into the receiving position on both the clean and the snatch. Number 7, your spine wants to be lined up with the direction your pelvis is facing. If you can't get into this position picking up from the ground, use blocks to elevate the bar. Number 8, activate your lats. To practice this one, we're going to lift the bar off the ground and allow it to swing away from us. Then feel your lats activating as you pull the bar towards you with straight arms. So now, as promised, I'm going to do a bit more of a deep dive into each of the cues that I just introduced. And I'm also going to go through some drills you can use to kind of feel what the right position is for you. So this is really important. This is kind of at the heart of the process that I take athletes through and that I go through with myself when I'm coaching myself in Olympic weightlifting. And that is that you need to be able to feel and know what's right and what's wrong because it feels easier or smoother or more stable or more controlled. So in order to sort of develop that sensitivity and awareness, it can actually help to put yourself in the wrong position. So if you, for example, if we're working on balance, the drill I showed, you kind of shift your balance clearly too far forward and clearly too far back, and that kind of makes you aware that being in either of those positions is less powerful. So at first you're just kind of aware if you're right on your toes or right back on your heels. Eventually you'll become more sensitive and you'll be able to kind of really fine tune that balance and get yourself right in the center of your base of support. So there's a similar drill that you can use to kind of fine tune the height of your hips. So you basically start holding the bar at mid shin height, like pick up height, and then you just allow your hips to kind of rise all all the way up to a point that's way beyond a practical pickup position, and you just kind of feel how that feels. And then you gradually like sit your hips down, down into the position, and even through that practical pickup position to kind of a point where they're way too low, and just feeling the two kind of polar opposites where your hips are way too high or way too low. Then you kind of get yourself into the mid-range, and you realize you've gained a bit of awareness, and you can fine-tune the height and kind of just like, you know, move your hips up an inch or down an inch, and kind of see how it feels, how it allows you to get your shoulders further in front of the bar, or how it allows you to get your spine working, you know, more in conjunction with your pelvis. Like some people have watched elite weightlifters, and elite weightlifters are almost all like very short people with short arms and legs. That's why they've become elite weightlifters, or that's why they've made it to the elite level, partly because of their like favorable biomechanics. And so they'll, you know, they'll kind of try and mimic the elite weightlifters pickup position, and often these guys with short arms and short legs have a very like they sit very deeply into their pickup position, whereas someone that's more of average stature, or you know, a guy that's 6'2", you know, maybe their hips are going to be quite a bit higher in the pickup position. So yeah, it's really important that you don't just look at what somebody else is doing, that you actually learn to feel for yourself, you know, what the right height for the hips is, and what the implications are. So, and lots of these things that I just talked about kind of work together. So, for example, the stance of your feet, whether you're more duck-footed or more lifting with your feet straight, or how wide you're putting your feet, can actually have an effect on that cue where you're trying to get your spine and your pelvis sort of facing in the same direction. I find personally, like if my feet aren't a little bit duck-footed, then I can't drive my knees out very well. And when I drive my knees out, my pelvis is able to sort of move a lot more and get lined up with my spine. So I feel like much stronger through my midline and through my trunk when I go a bit duck-footed and drive my knees out in the pickup. So yeah, it's important just to play with these things, especially things like stance, like try something different and kind of like try to observe whether or not it feels better, it feels more powerful. The other two that go really well together is the cue about like activating your lats to sweep the bar, you know, closer into your body. So there's some really good sort of tactile cues here. So if we're talking about having lats on, really what we're looking for is a really close bar path. So you can just simply think about that. How close can I keep the bar to my body? As you lift the bar from your shins up towards your hip, if you think about shaving your legs with the bar, that can be a really nice cue. It's going to keep it really nice and tight to your body, but not so pushed against it that it's creating friction. I normally will lift in a t-shirt, and so on my sort of clean pulls and snatch pulls, I find like if I'm doing it right, I'm just like catching my t-shirt with the bar on each lift, and you can kind of observe whether or not that's happening. Yeah, so you've got that lats on cue to sweep it in, but if you want to keep it close in the second half of the lift, when the bar's sort of moving, you know, past your pockets and past your hip, then you're going to need to internally rotate the shoulders and let the elbows come high and outside in order to facilitate that really close bar path. So those two things go together. It's like the lats on and the internal rotation. And another good tactile cue for keeping the bar close, and this is something I do to people when I'm coaching them. If I see the bars coming away, instead of like talking to them about glenohumeral rotation, I just walk up and stand right in front of them and I say, don't hit me with the bar. And they just naturally will kind of internally rotate their shoulders to keep it close to them. Now, if you don't have somebody coaching you, you could do this like in front of a squat rack, so that if you're standing level with the bar just an inch from the squat rack in the pickup position, and then you're trying to keep the bar from hitting the squat rack all the way through the high pull, that's a nice sort of tactile cue for keeping the bar really close. So just another thought on balance. We've talked about how it's important to get as many things in the right position as possible before we pick the bar off the ground. But it's also important that that balance, that centrated position where, our body weight and the barbell are centrated over the middle of our foot, it's important that we maintain that through the pickup. So one drill you can do is just kind of like pausing at different points. So you might start in the pickup position and find your balance, and then move up 2 inches and kind of pause and make sure you're still balanced by rocking back and forward. And then, move another 2 inches so you're at the knee, and kind of have observe whether or not you've lost your balance. Again, rock back and forward. Are you still centrated? Then another 2 inches up to mid thigh, and just kind of making sure you're staying balanced all the way up to the full standing position at the end of the clean deadlift. So the first thing we talked about was grip. So making sure your hands are at the correct width. I think we gave a good metric for that, kind of measuring with your thumbs from the start of the knurling for cleans, and then just making sure your hands are wide enough on the snatch. I see very often lifters who have been lifting for quite a while having too narrow of a grip on the snatch, and I think a lot of people just feel stronger if their hands are a bit narrower. And so they are trying to feel, what feels most powerful. The problem is that if you don't have your grip wide enough, you can't get the bar into your hip, and that is going to cause big problems. So it's a little bit of a paradox. I said you need to feel what feels most powerful, but there's sometimes when it might feel powerful with your hands narrower, but when you get to sort of, body weight on the bar, or you're getting close to body weight on the bar, or more than body weight on the bar, the snatch is not going to feel good if it's not getting into your hip. So then the grip will become really important. If you do snatch with a slightly narrower grip, and the sort of, you do the test of putting the bar in your hip crease in order to find like how wide your hands need to be, then I suggest you stick with that grip for a few weeks, and rather than like maxing out loads in those sessions, just keep the weights moderate and do, maybe do 2 or 3 sessions with that wider grip, and really kind of give it a chance to see if you can get the bar into the hip on every lift. Because at first it might feel, no, this feels weaker because you're maybe pulling more with your arms. And if you give it a couple of sessions, you might find, I can really get into the hip now, and sort of connect more with the leg drive power. So if you do change your grip, try to give it a couple of weeks. If you watch the cue talking about the spine and the pelvis, and you think, I really don't get my body in that position when I'm doing the pickup, try elevating the bar on blocks or lifting from the hang. I tell athletes this a lot, and it's often met with resistance, because people feel like if they're not lifting from the ground, they're not doing it properly. The end goal might be to lift from the ground, especially if you want to enter Olympic weightlifting competitions, but the first thing to do is just to learn the body position. And I really feel like unless that sort of spine and pelvis are sort of working together to transfer the force from your legs and your back into the bar, then you can't really feel like that pop and transition under the bar properly. If you're picking up in one position and then sort of extending your spine as you pick up, it just doesn't work. And for athletes who aren't intending to compete in weightlifting, for example, like I play ice hockey as well, and if I had other guys on my team come and lift with me, I would actually suggest they just lift from blocks or lift from the hang, because the skill of sort of picking the weight up from the ground is actually very specific to weightlifting, versus an ice hockey player who's maybe trying to use Olympic weightlifting just to like increase the maximum effort contraction in their muscles and their explosivity. they'll actually get bigger weights on the bar faster, just lifting from blocks or lifting from the hang. And yeah, then they can kind of reap the benefits of that training more quickly. And I actually think like lifting from the ground, the flexibility and like the length in your muscles that it requires might not be as favorable as an adaptation as, say, like doing heavy cleans from the blocks. So yeah, I think like if people didn't sort of have an ego about it or like feel that they weren't doing it right, I would like have everyone lift from everyone who had like a bit of a limitation and weren't able to get into the right pickup position off the ground. I would just have them lift from blocks for like a prolonged period, like even blocks that set the bar above knee height, and just gradually, very gradually, over like a year, maybe every 2 months, you just reduce the height of the blocks slightly until they're sort of the bar's getting down towards a mid shin height. I think there's two obstacles. It's like one, like getting the blocks out and setting them up can often be an obstacle for people, but also yeah, just that feeling that they see it as not doing it properly unless they do it from the ground. Whereas as a coach, I see it as like, well, what does the bar path look like? What does the body position look like? What does the timing look like? How connected are they to the bar? Like in weightlifting, when you put your hands on that bar, your body becomes a connection between the bar and the ground. There's only two things to do. It's like you're pushing the ground and you're pulling the bar, and you want to do that in the most powerful way. And if elevating the bar with blocks enables you to do that, then I think it's really important that you do that to generate more power, and you can just very gradually lower the blocks, and then you'll actually be moving in an efficient way, in a safe way, and in a really more powerful way, compared to if you are just like insisting on trying to lift from the ground and your spine, your pelvis aren't working together, you're sitting your hips too low or too high, or you're having to change your stance loads in order to kind of get into some sort of pickup position. I'd much rather see the bar elevated and see some really sort of tidy biomechanics and transferable biomechanics that are gonna they're gonna work a year later when you've put the time in, and you want to do the same lift from the ground. Thanks for watching, and if there was a particular part of the process that you found useful or were able to apply in your own lifting or with your students, please do let me know. If there's another movement or skill that you'd like to see broken down in detail, let me know in the comments. See you in the next video.